Maria, Rose, Shina. Tsutsu no kabe wa watashi tachi o hogishi 100 mo mote iru. Sore de wa mo ichido keo de subete yo yaraseru. In English. Welcome back to A Cast on Titan.
In this Abberant cast, we are going to talk about the dub so far as it has been released on Toonami, and the second episode of the dub actually just went off tonight, so we're going to go ahead and give our impressions off of that, and we still have our guest with us, Haruma, who will also be talking about that with us.
Yes, I'm still here, guys.
So, with that in mind, we'll go ahead and start talking about our impressions of the dub and what we think of some of the voice actors we've heard so far.
I really like it.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Sam. But I think that they did a good job. At first, when I was listening to it, I was really hesitant, but I think I'm that way with all dubs that I hear first in a different language. And especially Aaron's voice took me a while to get used to that. But then after a while, it started to grow on me. Mikasa's voice I liked. Armin's voice I'm kind of still iffy about. I think I like all their voices, but out of all of them, Armin's voice to me so far is the least appealing. I liked the Japanese version much better. But that's just me personally. But overall, I think they're pretty good dub.
That, I think, is what we should do. We should do a best and worst. Like, who so far has been the best to you and who's been the worst to you so far?
I don't know who did Grisha's voice, but it was really good.
Yeah, that was good.
It sounds like a real American, like, dad, old man kind of style.
Very true.
Yeah, I thought the best so far has definitely been Hannes. He was pretty good last episode, but this one, he was amazing. He just hit it spot on. And I agree that so far, my least favorite's been Armin. He's not squeaky enough. He's not high-pitched and annoying. At one point, I stopped because I was arguing with Stiller in Skype chat over whether Annie had a line or something. And while that was happening, the speaker changed from Aaron to Armin, and I didn't even notice. And I came back and was like, wait, why is Aaron saying this? This isn't something he'd say. And I noticed, oh, those are Armin's lips flapping.
Flapping.
Why is...
the dramatization.
Well, no, I like it. That's good terminology. I think he did pretty good with that. But I actually agree with Zach for once. I really thought Hannes did a really good job. Hannes' voice actor was pretty fantastic. I also want to give
It's too bad we won't see much more.
I also want to give an honorable mention to Carla, because I thought Carla in the first episode was fantastic. I know some people really didn't like Carla in the first episode, but I think her, I don't know how to say it. I think her
manliness.
Well, not manliness, but like her screaming and her emotion and her overwhelming sense of I don't know, pain and suffering and all that sorts of stuff came across very well. I really enjoyed that. Least favorite is hard for me to say because I want to say Aaron, but I can't because Aaron's voice actor wasn't cast to do a kid's voice. Like a young kid's voice. He was cast to do like a teenage sort of voice.
Well, we're going for sense from what we've seen, so go ahead and give us on what you've seen right now.
I would say Aaron based off of what we said so far, but I don't like to pick on Aaron for that reason, but I guess he would have to be my pick so far. Like if we update this in a couple weeks, maybe if we come back at the end of the season or whatever, that's probably going to change. But for right now, I would say Aaron's my least favorite. And then Hannes would be my favorite.
Arma?
I'd say I rather like Armin's voice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. It has room to grow. And I'd say my least favorite's Aaron's. But maybe I didn't notice it, but I felt like, towards the end of the episode where it showed him where he was a little bit older, it felt like it slightly changed a little.
Aaron's voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely had.
Yeah, and it really fit him. Which I think was
I'm sorry,
good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. I'm
okay, I was going to say, now that you mentioned Armin, I totally forgot that I had a thing about Armin. I did like Armin's young voice also. Like, I didn't think it was one of my favorites, but I also thought Armin did a pretty good job, the young Armin. Some of the dub clips that I've seen for later episodes, like in the supply depot and that sort of thing, I'm not crazy about his voice in the...
I'd have to say. I saw those.
In that clip. Like, he still sounds he's still not so young, I kind of feel like.
Pretty sure that Funimation just didn't choose very good clips because they made Mikasa not sound very good. They made Aaron not sound very good, but we've seen that they're still
It
pretty
could
good.
be. He might surprise me later on. Like I might
Now, how they'll fix the train wreck that is Levi, I'm not
when he
sure.
gets to when we get to the expedition, Armin might change my mind. But I think later Armin's going to disappoint me. Like just from what I've seen so far.
Well, if he stays young and Eren gets older, then that should help a bit with the
I totally think you're right though about Levi. Levi is absolutely a train wreck.
Just a gruff, manly man. Come here, baby cakes. Let's poke out those eyes, you horse.
Levi's voice, what was it like?
It was funny to see a YouTube video of somebody dubbing over Levi's dub clip with lines from Duke Nukem because I thought that was pretty appropriate.
It sounded like that.
It did sound like that. It was really cheesy and it was really bad. It was really hammy. I can't. It's too much. But
it doesn't fit his character, I don't think.
As far as it goes, like going back to a general level, did any of you guys have really good impressions of the dub overall?
I loved it. The citizens and the crowd, they were screaming, and you could hear the raw emotion in their voice. The preacher was great. I could definitely tell it was Dante's Inferno, as someone on the subreddit pointed out a few days ago. Reeves? No, not really. Yes. I don't like Reeves.
Yeah, Reeves was pretty bad.
The guy that was playing the rich guy in the red coat near Reeves, he would have been much better.
I really wasn't a fan of Pastor Nick. I didn't think Pastor Nick.
But he wasn't in this episode.
He was in the first episode, but in that episode.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're doing both.
I really didn't like Pastor Nick in the first episode.
I thought he was pretty good. One thing I didn't like that they changed in this dub was just Stiller's got this in some blackmail clips of me, but I didn't like how they changed the pronunciation of the wall names. You go from Maria Rose Shina to Maria Rose Sina. How the fuck do you screw up Maria?
USB, I don't like Cinna. I think Cinna is terrible.
Yeah, that's bad
too,
but
too.
I've always seen that one screwed up. I mean, all the translations, they spell it Sheena. So you'd think that Funimation would get in their heads, oh, it's pronounced Sheena, not
It might
Cinna.
just because of how many times I've seen episode 25, but I just can't stop thinking of Sheena, you know?
We're talking about a wall, not about a character from the Hunger Games.
It's absolutely Cena. Cena, Sheena, however you want to pronounce that. Yeah.
Also, one more thing. Did anyone else pick up the squishing sound that the crow made at the beginning of this episode?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, like it was pecking around inside the dead body, and it was like squishy and
Ew.
gory. It sounded disgusting, and I loved it. I don't think that was in the original Japanese version, but that just went on. That was awesome. On a bad note, at the point where the armored titan was charging the wall, and they were all fire the cannons, a cannonball hits the armored titan's shoulder. I noticed it kind of made a boing sound. I'm gonna have to rewatch this later, but I'm pretty sure it went boing.
The reason
I did not hear
the
it.
reason
I heard it. I thought it was Reiner. Oh shit! Wait, no. Wait, I thought it was the armored titan growling.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We got it covered.
Spoilers.
We got
are
it covered.
Okay, I thought it was just I thought it was Reiner just growling. That's what it sounded to me, but I couldn't make out the sound.
Man.
Anyway, the reason I asked originally, if any of you guys really had real good impressions of it, was because I'm like when we talk about dubs,
You're king of the down.
yeah, I'm the negative one. I'm that guy because I really like subtitled versions of animes a lot more than dubs in general. But in this case, I can be objective about it. Like, I obviously, I already said who my favorites and least favorites were, so I can look at it in a positive light. There are some things about the dub that I like, even though, there is very little chance that this will ever be better quality, in my opinion, over the subs. But at least in the dubs, light, I think that it's great for the show, and I'm happy it's happening. I'm glad there's so many people who are getting attached to it, but I can't, it'll never be over the subs to me, but I can say that some of the things that the dub has already done has been pretty good.
From what we've heard of Annie so far, and Annie is one of the better voice actors just from the Funimation crappy clips, so she's going to be pretty damn amazing, I think. I think that as soon as we get to the episode 22, 23 range, you're going to completely change your mind and go, oh my god, I fucking love this.
I don't think so at all.
Give me more Annie.
Are you telling me that I'm going to pick a dubbed version of Annie over the subbed original Annie? There's no way.
She sounds
And this is
amazing.
a good segue into the next topic, I think. Since this is the dubbed version, and we're talking about dub versus sub for Annie, her voice actress, there's no way in hell this is going to work out where she's going to do better in the dub because of the rewrites. The rewrites that we've already seen come into play already, and how undoubtedly they're going to affect the later episodes.
Well, we're talking about voice, not Annie as a character. So, my argument still stands.
The way the characters are interpreted, though, is changed in the dub because of the rewrites.
Yeah, I don't really like how
just because
Mikasa's kind of
it affects her character doesn't mean that her voice actress isn't like that the dub isn't still at fault here.
What did you guys think about the basement scene rewrites? I wasn't able to catch much because I was taking notes on this, but I will be able to rewatch it tomorrow in HD as opposed to here on a small computer screen. Bad quality. But what I did get was, no, you're insane. Mom's death put you off the deep end. And then Dad says, you gotta get to the basement. It's the way to the truth.
Did he even say to get to the basement, or did he like?
He didn't mention basement by name.
I
He
think
said to get there, I think.
Yeah, you just
I
have to
thought I
get
heard
there,
this.
vague there. In the first episode, he didn't call it a basement though. He called it a cellar.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was surprised it said
I
basement.
wonder if that.
Tomato, tomato.
Well, no,
We'll
it
get
might not be.
explanation. We'll get explanation of the episode where Aaron's explaining to
Maybe I
Pictures.
wonder if it's not a small difference, because if it's a cellar as opposed to a difference, that might mean that there's a different environment down there as opposed to a basement. Because if you think of a cellar,
one has a larger chance of getting crushed by the rock, and one doesn't.
you think of a cellar, you think of an area that you could keep wine in, or you could keep some sort of thing like that.
Okay, I just googled it. Cellar definition: a room below ground level in a house, typically one used for storing wine or coal. Synonyms: basement.
How about you go fuck yourself? How about that?
Damn. Burn.
Get us
Tomato, tomato.
Basement definition: the floor of a building partly or entirely below ground level. Synonyms:
Whatever that
one
was.
line that not Armin, I think it was Aaron. Aaron had one line in the first episode that really caught me off guard, where he was he and Mikasa had chased off the bullies that were after Armin, and he said, what was it he said? He said, he said something about, I'm that scary, or, yeah, that'll show him, or whatever, I'm that scary.
I think you said I'm just that
Yeah,
scary.
whatever it was so cheesy line that really didn't fit his character at all, because...
He basically said the same thing in Japanese, though. He said, "Ha, those pussies! Just one look at me and they ran
Is that
away."
what it said in
Or something
Japanese?
like that. Pretty much, something like
What?
that.
I don't know
Yeah.
if they used the word pussy, though. But it
Well,
was...
not pussy. More like those weaklings or those cowards. Just one look at me, they ran away.
I'll have to go back and look at it, because
And then I noticed you or someone else on the forum, on the subreddit, mentioned, like, Armin's line where he was like, no, I can stand on my own. I don't need your help. Or something like that. Mentioned, like, oh, I don't like that change of his character where he's stronger as opposed to the weakling. Well, when I found my, my revelation on that the woman being squashed by the rock was a bully, I had to go back and find that scene in the subbed version so I could get a screenshot. And I noticed he does basically say the same thing in Japanese.
And in the manga.
Yeah, and in the manga.
It wasn't actually me who raised that point, so I don't know. Like, I don't know who that was.
I don't know. It was just a dub negative Nancy, so I assumed it was you.
Well, I am a negative Nancy for the dub, but at least I'm trying, right? I mean, I should get some credit here for trying at least.
You get no credit. Zero.
Have a virtual cookie.
I will take that.
Yeah, virtual
That's
cookies.
good enough for me. I'll live with that.
There, but there's a Trojan on that cookies.
He's the dub Stittler. That name will live forever.
So, were there any other real particular lines that really caught your interest? Maybe that were different, or maybe that you sort of interpreted differently. Was there anything that that you saw that you interpreted differently from the sub version?
The lack of the grim reminder just killed the whole thing for me, kind of.
What did you guys think of Shadis in this episode?
I think he fit the military boot camp guy pretty well. He did a little more introduction than he did in the original. But I mean, I don't know why you were commenting like, oh, he sounds good, when we already got him in the first episode. With the humanity's first base and hey, I fucked up and got your son killed speeches.
I agree, though. His voice was good.
Yeah,
enjoyed
he's
I'd
good.
say I didn't
Wait,
see
that
that.
was
Oh,
Shardis
sorry.
in
Go
the
ahead.
beginning? Wait, that was Shardis in the beginning?
Of the first
Yeah, the commander.
episode, yeah.
The commander out in the forest is Shadis. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I never...
It's actually that way because Shadis he was the Survey Corps commander before Erwin was.
Yeah, and then the episode where Moses' mother confronted him just made him break down, and he quit.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes.
So I think I don't know if
I mean, we covered this in our first episode. So obviously, you haven't been listening to us, Harma.
What?
I thought Shardis was about average. Like I didn't think everybody was about average except with a few
I mean,
exceptions.
this is a really good dub. So yeah, he's about average for this dub. But for most dubs, like Death Note or Sword Art Online, he was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I have to. Agree.
I wouldn't agree with that too much. I thought Death Note was pretty good, but
That's no.
Everyone I've heard ever is like, "Oh my god,
well,
Death Note is the
that's
death of dubs. It is so death."
I mean, I don't agree with that, but that's another topic. But I thought the cast was average with a few exceptions, but I think overall the dub was pretty good for a dub. You know, I thought it was pretty well done with one or two hiccups, but overall it was pretty good.
I would agree.
Hiccups like cutting the opening in the first.
Yeah, I'm really glad they fixed that for the second episode.
They would have lynched the guy.
Notice that, like, even though they put in the extension for the first opening like it should have been originally,
It's not an extension if it's something that was taken out.
whatever. the ending stayed cut and it stayed trim.
Not happy about that.
I don't know.
I don't mind.
That ending is my jam.
I don't-
That's a horrible.
Yeah, I don't know
ending.
what
I
the
don't like
public
it.
perception of that is because
like
obviously people love
I
the
don't like
intro.
Scotty, you didn't watch episode 1, so you'll never have to live the horrors of watching Guren no Yumiya be terribly
Oh,
cut.
it was
I saw that. I saw that part
it was
though.
because
Because everyone was
it
talking
was pretty
about
hilarious
It, so.
because of the outrage.
Like, Stiller was watching it live, and he's just talking to me, and Scotty, he's like, what the fuck, did they just cut Guren no Yumiya?
I was over in the Toonami discussion thread when that came on, and people were like, "Oh my god, here comes the opening! It's gonna be so great! Everybody get hyped for the opening!" And then it hits, and it's on for like 10 seconds. It cuts, and everyone loses their shit. Oh my god, what happened? Where did it go? What happened?
It's like the reaction going on right now in the Pokemon subreddit for the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire footage that we were supposed to get
Yeah,
today.
I don't know
No
nothing
one
about
cares.
that.
No one cares.
You know what? Harma cares, and I'm sure a lot of other people care. So
I
you
do
too
care. I care a
can
lot.
I
stop.
care a lot.
I'm just trying to make a relative comparison.
Invalid. You did a horrible
Yeah,
job.
so with that in
Congratulations.
mind, I don't think we have anything else to cover for the dub, because we've only got 2 episodes out so far. Some of the characters' voices are going to change because they're going to grow up. We've got a lot of good material ahead of us, and for right now, we can put a wrap on this and segue into our next segment, which is where we're going to talk about. We're going to talk more about actual writing. We're going to talk a little bit about character writing, and specifically, we're going to talk with Harima about some of the stuff that he does over on fanfiction, and how his process works with writing, and how he evaluates characters. Because coming from a writer's perspective, for his, it's interesting to hear because it might be a little bit different from how normal people would interpret characters. Just because when you write characters, your thinking about them changes a little bit.
See, your use of normal people there doesn't really work because you interpret characters above and beyond what most other normal people do. People keep asking me for a Hanji rant, and I'm like, she's got glasses and she's weird. That's why I like her. I can't do an essay like Stiller can.
Well, even for me, even my interpretations, they're not high-end stuff. They're not as good as they could be because I've seen some stuff out there that some people have done that are way more precise, way more accurate, way more supported. Have better supporting evidence than some of the stuff I've written up. And I'm not even a writer. It's not even as good as it could be. So using me as an example is kind of weird because
you're above and beyond for everyone else.
I mean, most people.
So then those people are like Isayama's under.
I guess I get invested a little bit more than some people do, and I'll talk a little bit more about some character depths and stuff, but a writer's perspective is still unique from that, just because the thought process is different about how they see things, how they see development and how the directions go for characters in that light. What techniques do you use to flesh out a character? How do you treat character death? Do you like, and if you're on one side of the fence or the other about character death, why would that be? So that's the kind of thing that we want to talk a little bit about here.
So there's your preview, guys. Tune in. Too much cheese?
You mean? I was about to say, you mean tune into the thing we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were doing 2 episodes.
No.
So we brought on Harima as a guest for this Abberant cast. We brought him on as a writer. He has written a lot of stuff over on fanfiction.net, and that will be linked in the annotations for this video. Harima, we want to actually ask you about how your thought process works for how you write a chapter.
Every time I open the computer and I start writing a chapter, I have nothing, absolutely nothing in my mind. It's a complete blank. So a lot of times it's a struggle. But for a lot of writers, you ever hear of writer's block?
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The reason I'm failing
For a lot of writers, it only takes that one little thing to influence their story. Like for me, the very first influence of my story was just when I first decided to just start writing a fan fiction, period. Because when I first started reading the manga back in 2009, I didn't really like Attack on Titan too much. It was grim. The art style was horrible, atrocious. Even I couldn't get into it. It wasn't until like a couple years later when they announced the anime that I was like, wow, this is the same thing I read a few years back. I couldn't believe it. That's when I started to watch the anime and I started to enjoy Attack on Titan a little more. But it took over my life. But when I was watching it, I never really looked too deeply into the character. It wasn't until I made the conscious decision to actually start writing a fan fiction, that I kind of had to take a look at these characters. And when I did, one thing I realized is that this story is glaringly human. It's about the struggle of human beings. And that's the entire process I go into with my story. That I have to keep it within the grasp of human beings. The comedy, what they do, what they say, what they feel. I have to keep it within that grasp.
Keeping it all like within character too, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I don't want to. I can't go into a story and start writing and just start deviating too much away from their character or what I perceive their character to be or would do in certain situations. If I do, then it just goes into the realm of fantasy fulfilling. I don't want to be that fan fiction writer that just goes around fulfilling my little erotic fantasies in whatever I write. I want to tell a story.
So
I don't want to be that.
So you'll never be the guy who's writing the weird like original character / whatever character types of fanfics, right?
Oh hell no.
Oh, stop.
Or the crappy ones where they're in high school and everyone's fucking each other.
Oh my god.
Isn't that an actual manga spin-off,
Calling
though?
some people out here now. In particular, since you mentioned keeping the people in character, I'm interested like in how you write some of the dialogue, because some of the interactions and some of the stuff I've read is like, it's just crazy because of how I don't want to say canon, but like how in character and how appropriate some of the dialogue is for some of those characters. Like in the latest chapter for in the latest chapter for Commander, the opening for that between Ymir, Krista, and Annie and how they're interacting, it's just crazy how appropriate, like how much sense that makes that they would interact like that,
Well, I don't want to get...
Like, don't spoil it or
is,
anything, but just,
No, it's not. What's the point of spoiling it? I want you to read. But I'm like, they say the most observant people are loners, and you know what? I'm a loner. That's the truth. I spent hours upon hours just observing people. It's kind of creepy, but that's the truth. And I like to do something called patterns of human behavior. And like I said before, the story of Attack on Titan is a very human human story. And I kind of notice these things about people. They react certain ways, they do certain things in reactions to their relationships with other people. Like, for example, Krista and Ymir. They have a very good relationship, but it's been shown just like Like for example, the whole headbutt thing. It was I saw it just a small snippet of it. This kind of behavior on one of the episodes after Eden died. How they just like Krista just headbutted Emir in the stomach or something like
Yeah.
that. And I noticed how familiar Emir was with the action, and I was like, that calls for that's probably a pattern of human behavior, between the two of them. That's something they probably do with each other regularly. They're comfortable with each other physically. That's part of their relationship.
That's very interesting. That you psychoanalyze pretty much the same way people would observe maybe when writing a script for a movie, you hear of people who go to the actual country or talk to the actual culture of people who they're trying to act out. So what you do is you kind of observe the characters, how they'd act in their environment, and then you take the snippets of how they act, and then you kind of imagine how that would relate to the bigger picture in general, like outside of the story. That's
Yes,
very
because the
interesting.
story doesn't give you much.
Hmm.
You have to interpret it
Scotty,
Right.
if you want to write a story with a plot.
Scotty, you would be really interested in seeing the interaction between Connie and Sasha in some of his stories.
Oh, yeah?
Because there's some good stuff with him in there.
I'm
I'll
actually
definitely check it
writing Sasha right now. they actually have a big part in the story to play.
One of the personal questions I had was about like my big connection to Commander obviously was the fight scene. Yeah, the fight scene between Annie and Mikasa, because you didn't skirt it at all. Like you took it head on and you made it a real thing, and you gave all the details to it. You made it a full-fleshed actual fight with actual,
Yeah.
I don't know, realness to it. Like it seemed like a legit thing.
I feel like I'm missing something because I haven't read any of this yet.
I mean, I would recommend it, and I know we're going to link to it in the annotation. I would recommend everybody read it just because it's a great story. But
I definitely will.
I'm definitely interested in the thought process behind the fight. Like I gotta know what was going on in your head when you were writing the fight scene.
Yes, that was one of my favorite things to write, because what happened was I spent nearly 6 hours writing that scene, and I wrote nearly 20,000 words, to the point where they were destroying each other, like ripping hair and pulling teeth and stabbing out of knives that came out of nowhere.
Oh
I
my god.
wrote everything. I wrote all of that, and you know what? And then I went back and just calmed myself down. I started taking out things that didn't make sense, or leaving things that did make sense, and then I added the last little recipe was I added an intelligence to it. I didn't want to just be them punching each other. I wanted to see what they would do with their minds. How Mikasa would do certain things with her mind, and how Annie would do certain things with her mind, and what her abilities were.
Absolutely, talking about
That-
Yomi, talking about reading the mind of the
Kinda like-
opponent.
Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows.
Yeah,
It was
that movie,
all
when
it
he,
was all
like,
fights. It was
analyzes-
counter moves. It was counter moves and counter
Mhm.
moves. It was great. And the way that
Yeah.
fight ended was a counter move, and it was amazing. But I couldn't believe it when I read it. I was like, "Holy shit, this is awesome!" You know, even though I was
hoping for an Annie win.
yeah, it didn't exactly turn out the way I was kind of hoping it would, but I understood, like, I think you replied to one of the reviews I made for that, which was, it's like serving a greater purpose. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's
Yes,
fine.
exactly.
But it was,
Like when I was writing the fights, 99 times out of 100, Annie won, because I was trying to make the fight intelligent, and I know that technique and ability would surpass just brute strength any day. That's what I perceived. But yeah, that's what I perceived. And any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I was really curious. I know you kind of touched on this before, but so do your personal feelings for the characters ever? Do you find yourself like, God, I really shouldn't write this character this way, like a victory for this character, but because I love this character, like Armin or someone like that for you, do you ever go like, I just really want him to just eke out a victory here? Like, let me give him a good point here.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to one of my reasons for actually starting the fic, because I really hated how Armin was perceived by some of the people in the fandom. Like, he was weak. I was really angry, because I felt like, how is it there's this many shallow people in the world insult Armin this way when he's done more than any other member of the 104th besides Eren and Mikasa. So I didn't understand it, and for a long time I was angry. So I just fuck it, I'm gonna write something. That was basically
Very
trained.
true. Very true.
Eventually when I started writing, I think a lot of people can tell in the very first chapter I had absolutely nothing going for me. I had no idea where the story was going. It wasn't until I started writing, and by the time I was in the Annie Mikasa fight, that I realized I could do something with the story. That and also I got a beta, Smithy. She's amazing, and that gave me a lot of confidence because the way she edited the stories made it 10 times better. And then I realized that I could actually take it somewhere. I could form a plot. I could make characters do this and do that. It just took off from there.
I'm kind of curious. Like, could you elaborate a little bit on what the betas actually do? I'm kind of curious, like if they just do like proofreading, or do they actually offer contributions to like what you're writing?
Yeah. Well, for my beta, she not only proofreads, but she also makes the story flow better. Like sentences, she catches like words that I reuse a lot, which is a big problem for me. I reuse a lot of words because I'm not that great of a writer, but she catches all of that. She has a strong vocabulary, so she makes my story 5-10 times better than it actually is.
Editors are really good for stuff like that. Yeah. Some of the stuff I've written, never any fan fiction or anything like that, but like essays for school. One of my struggles is trying to use the right words and proper word choice and not over. Really, I don't like using a word more than once. If I say like story, the next time I have to use fable or something like that. Don't know where I was going with that.
Source is your friend.
Well, I mean, it was a good
Source is
comment
my
because
friend.
that's the sort of thing that comes up. I'm sure Dharma runs into that a lot, where he's like, "Oh, what's another word for this? I feel like I do this a lot." Or maybe the beta comes into play, where the beta says, "Hey, maybe you should like reword this sentence or do something else with it."
Yeah.
No, I give her complete freedom because she's just that good. I give her complete freedom.
Right.
If she changes something, I'll stick with it.
So, one other question I had was about the breaker, like based off of the breaker, not specifically about the breaker, but the premise, the concept, like the overall where the story is revolved around for the breaker is such a fascinating scenario for like setting up an environment for these characters to interact in. I'm kind of curious about how you come up with an idea like that, where you say, all right, I want to write a story about this character, that character, this character, that character, but I'm going to put them in this environment and see how they react to it.
Exactly. Like this again, this stems back from what I think Attack on Titan is. It's a story about humanity, and in my opinion, humanity is not a pretty thing, especially when we're put on the worst situations. Like for example, when I was watching the movie Dark Knight and the Batman movie. Joker said a great line. I'm only as good as the world allows me to be. I wanted to put the characters in a situation where it's where they question, where they basically see how far they're willing to go when they're put in a situation that isn't exactly optimal. When they're forced to do certain things, where they question what is right and wrong, especially in regards to their relationships with each other. I mean, what would they be willing to do when it comes to stealing for a friend, or to go to violence,
Killing other humans because Levi says so.
Yes, exactly. I want them to be in those situations where the most primal part of being human comes to light. It's not all flowers and rainbows. I don't want a good bad story. I want a human.
I just go back to what you were saying earlier about not being the kind of writer who's writing self-serving types of fan fiction like that, because I think what you just said there, I think fits pretty well for Annie, and you have a really good contrast to that with Armin, and the way you have those two interact a lot of the times, I think really displays that really well.
Yeah, Annie and Armin are two very intelligent people. I think when you have those types of minds, when they clash or conflict or just even coexist, it creates from some really interesting interactions, and I'm gonna get in that. That is another one of my motivations for actually creating this fic. And Erwin was one of my biggest motivations, because he was just the type of person that I would encourage just the world to look at differently. Like, person is not a bad person.
Not at all. And actually, I'm kind of surprised that Erwin had that reputation. I think Armin, I would be more surprised would have a reputation for that. But Erwin in particular, I just don't know why people would think that he's, I don't know, not good. You know, why would you consider him to be evil like that?
I can see kind of how people would see him to be evil. I don't agree with it at all, but in the fact that, like, his motives are questionable because he's like, oh, I don't care about my men, I'm going to sacrifice them. And when you so haphazardly, like, think of life in terms of, like, oh, this isn't a life, this is like a pawn, and I'm going to save X amount of people because I'm going to sacrifice X amount of people, it kind of makes you think, like, that's how a sociopath kind of thinks of things, like, oh, I'm not going to kill, like, I might kill you and feel no remorse because I feel like I did it for the right reasons. So, like, someone might look at Erwin and say, he shows kind of the same tendencies, even though he seems like he's doing it for the right causes. That might be now, but you never know later on down the road.
People think Erwin is justifying murder.
Right, exactly.
See, I never agreed with all the people in the anime and the manga that shouted at Erwin, don't you have any human feelings? You're sending all these people to their deaths, blah, 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 blah. Of course he does. Of course he feels this, but he's trying to save you. He's trying to do what's best. And if he has to make a few sacrifices, that is a choice he takes very seriously. And the impact of it is not lost on him.
Yes, exactly. It's because he understands the truth of his world. It's often a bitter pill to swallow, but if he understands what needs to be done, it's a necessity, not exactly right or wrong, but a necessity.
Yeah, like Bertolt says, do you think anyone actually wants to kill people? Or whatever he says. Something like that.
That's where those characters, Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie, they're caught up in the flow of something they cannot control, which is a war we have yet to fully understand. They're soldiers on the other side, and we're soldiers on one side. It's oftentimes for many people, especially in a war, our decisions are not our own.
They're the commanding officers.
I was thinking we're just...
But will that excuse the behavior? I don't think so.
The thing, it's not about excusing behavior. Like, for example, you believe Annie's actions were wrong.
Stellar. We're waiting on an answer,
I don't know
Stellar.
who he's asking. He's asking me, he's asking Scotty.
We're asking you now.
I don't know.
Annie did a lot of horrible things, and I don't think you can excuse her for killing all of the people that she did. Like, there is such a thing where you can say that she did so many horrible things, but I think the story is going to be going in a direction that's going to try and show a lighter side to her and show a more gray, where the question gets raised about, you know, how you sort of treat her or how you feel about her. Because on one hand, yeah, she did murder a lot of people, and yeah, she could have probably done some things differently, and I think the expedition in particular, one thread I had about that a while back, where I kind of said, yeah, you know, maybe the plan was kind of dumb, but the plan wasn't great. But I think once we get more information about them and where they come from, I've always said I think that they're going to go on some sort of redemption arc, so that the question gets raised: are they that bad? You know.
That doesn't change the fact that Berthold was a colossal douchebag, and he murdered millions.
It's easy to say that without knowing what the redeeming factor is.
And Annie, she had fun killing those soldiers, Stiller. You cannot deny that. She did not kill any.
Totally deny
she did not kill any two soldiers in the same way, Stiller.
I can totally deny that. She
slingshots one, she smashes another into the tree, she stomps on another, she jumps and throws another, she kicks another.
I already did say that she did fuck up. She made a lot of mistakes during the expedition.
She was creative. She was enjoying that. I understand
how people would be angry with some of the actions Annie did. But for me, look at the entire picture. Let's look at what we're actually dealing with here in terms of what Annie did and what she actually is, and what it means when it comes to morals. Like, for example, what is Annie? She's a soldier. We know that. And what is she doing? She's a soldier fighting in a war. Isn't it generally accepted that when it comes to in terms of war, murder, things like that are required? This is a truth. When it comes to war, murder is condoned.
But there are some things called war crimes in which, even in a war, it's not acceptable to do them.
Hold on a minute. But did any of her actions constitute as war crimes?
Kind of. I mean,
I'd say so.
kind of.
Crush
The
the
way,
church.
Your
like,
point of view.
right.
So when it comes to that, you can't really call Annie evil or what she did was wrong, because when we as human beings say that there are situations where we can condone murder, doesn't it suggest that what morals actually are is what is accepted and not accepted by
Well, hold
general
on.
human society?
Oh, I think the situation is much different than in a war situation. For the reason, I won't argue against they're in a war. However, it wasn't a war established by both sides, and that was tried to be resolved with peaceful solutions. For example, like if the Titans, the shifters, came out and then they approached the humans and they said, "Look, we need so and so. If you don't give it to us, we're gonna kill you." And then the humans were like, "Nah," and then they fought. But what happened was they initiated a war without the consent of both sides, which in itself is pretty bad. And not only that, but they didn't even tell or give their demands for what they wanted. So in that situation, I can't even condone it as like a full-fledged war in the sense that you think of it as. I mean, it definitely became a war, but I don't feel as though it's a war in the sense like, oh, well, in war there are casualties. Yeah, but there...
But what I'm saying is that it's the moral ramifications of the entire situation at hand.
And we don't have all the details right now.
Yeah, not only that, it's because it makes you question whether something like murder. Isayama does this. This is what his story is about. This is it. It may not be in the situation may not be defined as war in the general sense of the term, but it is still humans murdering each other out of some reasons we have yet to understand. But can we call that wrong? Especially when we look at what the definition of war is. We condone murder. What I'm saying is that morality in the Attack on Titan universe shows that morality is not absolute. Can we call Annie's actions wrong when we don't even really understand the definitions of what wrong is or what right is? Or is there an absolute definition of what either of those two mean?
I'm going to say that if you commit murder and you didn't go about even a single other way around getting to your goal and you just skipped directly to murder, then yes, in that situation, murder will be wrong every single time. Unless, if you don't go around and you say, hey, let's try to get whatever our objective is peacefully. Can we not do it peacefully? Then what is the path of least resistance? What they did, I cannot think that it was the path of least resistance, because it would inevitably lead to the complete destruction of humanity. So there's no way that could be the path of least resistance unless your goal was to destroy humanity, in which case it's by definition evil. So I wouldn't say that it was justifiable in my mind.
At this point,
for that
I think
reason.
No, it goes hand in hand with the fact that morality is not absolute.
That's
at
true.
this point, I think we do need to bring in the manga spoilers point, because there was a scene, I think in chapter 42.
We've already been talking about manga spoilers.
Well, you know what I mean. I want to bring in a dialogue line from chapter 43 or 44, I think it was, where Reiner actually said outright that originally their goal was to destroy humanity. Like, their goal was actually to come in and tear shit up. And that changed for some reason, although the assumed reason is because of Eren, although that wasn't explicitly stated.
Are you sure? I thought Reiner said because of you, Eren. I'm pretty sure he said that.
He did say that the last person it should be in the hands of is you, but I think it's pretty well accepted that they changed their original goals because of Eren.
Like how they didn't smash the second wall in Tross because Eren shifted suddenly.
I mean, going back to the point about talking about if Annie's evil or not, though, I gave up a long time ago on trying to say no, she's not that bad. She's sort of innocent, not really. Yeah, I gave up on saying that she was evil just because I think some of the things she's done, it's hard to see some of the murders that she's committed as not being something she could have avoided, even though she wanted to avoid them. Being able to say that no, I didn't want to kill those people doesn't really excuse killing those people. But I do think, like, I've been a believer for a long time now that when we get further down the line of the plot, what they're going to try and do is add a lot more white to the shifter people, all of them. Reiner, Berthold, Annie, Ymir, all those guys. They're gonna add all the good, redeemable qualities to them, so that we have to look at these characters and we have to make a judgment call. We say, was the actions that they committed that were what we personally, subjectively consider evil, were they worth what the reward was or what the reward would have been? And I think that's going to be subjective to everyone. And there won't be a universal answer to saying, oh, she was evil, oh, she did, do horrible things without just cause, or the other way around.
No one can answer good or evil, and that goes not just for Attack on Titan. It goes for all of real life. No one can say, America or Russia? Who knows?
I do think that's the good point of this right now, though. I think that's the good point of this writing, where we take a step back and we look at this and we say, we have all these questions about the things that are going on. We can relate this. We can relate this to our everyday lives. We can say all these different things about black and white. We can, grays. I think the grays are what Attack on Titan is about, and how we evaluate the grays, and
a bunch of aliens,
and how we see grays in everyday life, and just how we evaluate it and how we go about making our own choices every day.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I love Attack on Titan so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree too.
I'm glad I could wrap that up.
Anybody think I'm a psychopath yet?
No.
I'm a psychopath, that's for sure.
No, but
yeah,
I definitely.
I explain this to people. They look at me like I'm
crazy.
I
would have heard it by now if anyone thought I was a psychopath for supporting Annie like I have done.
I mean, I think I might be legally diagnosed as a psychopath, but I'm not sure.
One of the things we didn't get to do, or one of the things I guess we didn't do, I don't know, for whatever reason, during the regular podcast when we introduced Harma, was we didn't actually ask him about his background for where he got started in Attack on Titan, why his favorite character is who his favorite character is.
Oops.
What his favorite scenes in the anime were, what his favorite scenes in the manga were, that sort of thing.
Right. My name is Haruma. Well, my real name is not Haruma, but okay, yeah. My pen name on fanfiction.net is Ronald Weasley the Hero, and I'm primarily here, I think, because of my story Commander and the Breaker. And my favorite, how I got started was, obviously I wanted to create a story about my favorite character, Armin. And the reason, I mean, there's not too deep of a reason why I liked Armin at first. He became my favorite character because the first scene of him was him being bullied, and I had experience with being bullied in my life for far too long. Until I, became 6 feet tall.
There we go.
I can relate.
Yeah, exactly. So, I understood him. I could sympathize with him, and that's all I needed. A little bit of sympathy, and boom, favorite character. The amazing stuff came after. The intelligence, the moral ambiguity, how Erwin influences him, all those things. It was basically the perfect storm.
I kind of felt the same way about Annie. You talked about earlier how some of the things you see about people from being a loner. I kind of felt like Annie was also at first a loner. I think her true personality, I don't think ever came through to light. But I think just that the world that she's grown up in and the world that she's been exposed to has forced her to be a loner, to forced her into a lifestyle and the type of personality that she didn't, I guess, naturally fall into. And I think there are a lot of things about her that are relatable to people. But I like that connection that people can make to characters like that, where they can say, I could see that, because that's the sort of thing that I've been through before, or, oh, I recognize that, I know a guy like that, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Especially with a character like Jean, too. He's the everyman.
Yeah, Jean is awesome. I love Jean. So he's probably my
Yeah.
second favorite character, actually.
Definitely one of my favorites too.
So where did you start with Attack on Titan? Did you read the manga first, or did you watch the anime first?
Yeah, I read the manga, the very first chapter when it came out on Manga Fox back all the way in 2009.
So you've been here for the whole ride.
I hated Attack on Titan at first. Didn't I tell you that? I couldn't
You
stand
did say
it.
that.
And I was like, why are all these naked people killing the little people? And
That's awesome.
I couldn't understand why this thing was even published. It was I actually remembered myself calling this an atrocity of a manga,
That's hilarious.
and I didn't like it at
That's
all.
hilarious.
I read about 10 chapters. I followed it for about a year. I read about 10, 12 chapters, and I just quit until 2013. I saw the anime came out. I was like, I recognize that. I recognize that.
That's the
And,
thing with the
you know,
naked
I
people, the little people.
Yeah, that was basically it. And you know, it was completely different from what I remembered. But of course, I was like, what? I was 19. I'm 19 now. Back then, I was like, what? 14, something like that. And
Right.
you know, I changed a lot. And my viewpoint of Attack on Titan completely changed. Did a 180. I loved it. the horror, the atrocity became my favorite part of it.
Speaking of horror and atrocity, beautiful segue. From a writer's perspective, how do you look at character death? Because I know that's a topic we talk about a lot on here, as we talk about characters dying and the impacts that can have on the story and how that can give closure or that can, prolong certain things. Well, how do you look at character death?
For me, character depth can be character death?
Death,
Or
as in murder.
As in Marco,
As
apparently.
in Marco, yes.
Well, for me, death is something we all share, something we can all sympathize with. There's not one human being that can say that they have no connection to death. We all die, that's part of life. But death, I believe in. I think too much sometimes that people try to assign meaning in death. They try to make it worth something, when in reality, if you look at death, it's end. That's it. That's what death itself means. Whether you believe in the afterlife or something else, death itself is it. It's fine.
Even in that, I think that's a good message in itself, because I agree that a lot of times you can draw such a great message out of death, but at the same time, I really like that point, because there are a lot of times where you could just say, he got fucked up because he got fucked up.
Yeah, death can have meaning and death can be meaningless. But in the end, it's over. It's death. For me, if I'm going to kill a character, I want it to have meaning. Because that's just me. Because I know that I'm writing a story, a plot to both entertain myself and entertain the reader. So I'm not going to be the type to just kill people because of a whim or for something meaningless. Especially when you're writing a story. I feel like you have to make it have meaning. A story is fantasy. You have to understand that part when you're writing. So if I'm gonna kill a character is gonna die. I'm gonna make sure that it's explained, it's warranted, or just go back to what happened in canon and just use that.
So about some of the other characters in Attack on Titan, are there any other characters in Attack on Titan that you really have an interest in their character? Like, is there anybody who really stands out for having a interesting arc or an interesting, quirk about them? Like, is there any...
And don't you dare name a kitchen character.
Is there anybody out there who's kind of caught your eye? Like, do you have any interest in seeing where a specific character is going for some sort of weird reason?
I very much like Gene. One of the things that caught my eye is when he talked about how when he was talking to Armin about how a leader, if they basically screw up, he should expect his followers to stab him in the back.
Yeah.
That line, it got me to thinking that Gene, the guy who came in here expecting to go into the military police, to live a comfy life within the walls, who was kind of a mama's boy, judging by the OVA, is now saying something like that. It means, it's not explained, it's not thrown in your face kind of explanation, but it means that he's fundamentally, as a person, that he's changed. His worldview has changed, and and you look at him and you realize that he's a very different person, very, very different person. That takes a lot. It takes a lot for a person to change from one thing like that, how Gene was in the beginning, to what he is now. He still kept a part of himself. But like Armin, not exactly like Armin, but like Armin, he started to understand the truth of this world, of what possibly might be done or what possibly might have to be done in certain situations. I think that, I mean, it hints at the fact that right now the leaders, the people that they're supposed to count on, like Erwin and Levi and, you know, even Hanji to a certain extent, are kind of leaving these kids out in the dust. Like, they came here expecting to engage Titans, for Titans to be their enemies. Now they're expected to fight the people within the walls. That, I would say that type of situation is one of those things Gene was talking about earlier. If the leader fucks up, then it might possibly lead to one of their followers stabbing them in the back.
Such an extreme circumstance that they're in right now, because I don't know about leaving them behind in the dust so much as the situation changing so rapidly and being such a hard thing to adapt to because of the situation that they're in, that I think overall as a theme for the show, where these kids that go into the military and come out, they have to rapidly mature, and they absolutely have to go through a lot of bullshit to get to the point where they can actually serve for one of these military branches. Because, yep. I mean, practically everyone has emotional trauma and all these different things wrong with them. But it's such an interesting thing to see, where we can say, oh, well, that character's an orphan? Yeah, well, that's average. Everybody's an orphan.
Well, when half the population is sent out to die, there's going to be a lot of orphans.
Yeah.
That's true.
And with that, Gyojinjo ni Kyasuto no Betsu no episodo o kite itadaki, arigatou gozaimasu. Josashi ni tsute wa ji no suki no chun oshite kudasai. Sayonara! That means thank you for listening to another episode of A Cast on Titan. Please tune in next month for more. Goodbye!